Hi, so today I'm going to show you how I made myself a ladder for my Sprinter van to access the top roof rack on my van. So you can of course buy these ladders. I had an old extension ladder, a lightweight extension ladder, and this is the other half of it. So that ladder that's on there is actually the other part of this, which I've taken apart and just used the narrower portion. It's an aluminium ladder. So here you can see reasonably well how I've put this all together. You can see inside there's a flat piece of metal, a nut on there, which attaches it to the bottom of the roof rack inside this channel that you can see. I've then cut some holes through this U-shaped bracket with a hole saw, and I've got a piece of aluminium tubing with a fairly substantial wall thickness going through that. I have another one towards the front there. I've got a couple of bolts through there, which you can just see there, and they prevent that from sliding through those holes. I've then got a couple of holes through the ladder there and just in there, so the ladder hangs off that. So that is taking the weight of the ladder and the weight of me when I climb up. So that's what that little thing looks like that sits inside this inside the slot. They're also obviously used to attach things at the top of your roof racks like that. I don't remember what they're called, but basically we've got that in there, and we've got a hole, so that's holding that in place on there like that. And there's just a nut and a couple of washers, including a spring washer, that go on there. Might be an idea to use an eyelock nut there with the vibrations that will go on with any vehicle. Things can vibrate loose. So you do need to, you can see the leg of the roof rack comes at an angle outwards like that, and this bracket goes down straight. You're going to need to make sure that you get the attachment point here a little bit back into that. You don't want it sitting right on the edge where if it does vibrate a bit it comes out. You don't want that, and you want this nice and tight as well, this nut. You can see in here I've actually cut an angle on that so it doesn't interfere with this leg. So a couple of things. You're going to need to use a hole saw to cut some holes. You need to use a hole saw that is specifically for metal. A hole saw for wood will not work very well, it will just blunt. It's a good idea when drilling or sawing a hole in any metal to use cutting fluid and to set your drill on the lowest possible speed and go slowly. It will take time, but if you try to go too fast, all you will do is blunt your drill bit or your hole saw or whatever it is you're using. So when this is all attached and I'm on the ladder, what's happening is the weight is being taken by this tube, which is transferring the load to the roof racks and down through the leg of the roof rack. I've then got an angle. I put an angle into that ladder by cutting a piece out here, bending it, and then welding it all around here. And then as I come down, I'm keeping close to the side of the van, and I have another little kink in it there to ensure it stays a reasonably even distance from the van. And I've got another kink down at the bottom here where it comes in, and then it just bolts onto the the van down here in a place where we've got some substance to the structure of the skin of the van. So a couple of important things to consider. Your mirror, side mirror, is going to stick out a certain distance. We definitely don't want this ladder to stick out any more than necessary, and certainly not any more than that mirror. And this would be my hiking boot. I've just got that so that I've got a decent amount of my foot on that tread. I don't want it so close that I'm on my toes like that, because that makes it much more likely that I'm going to slip off the ladder and fall and hurt myself. It's not necessary to go all the way through to here, bearing in mind, once again, we're trying to keep this ladder fairly close to the vehicle, but you definitely want to be at least in the middle of this front part of your foot. So of course, when you do this, you're going to need to sort out some kind of a template so that you can get your angles right. What I've done there is I've just got a couple of scrap pieces of timber, and I've clamped one up to the side of the U-bracket that I was talking about earlier, and I've got the other one here which is clamped onto that piece of wood, and it's coming down at roughly the angle that I wanted to have it, the distance from the ladder, the distance from the van that I want down here. Now we can adjust this and so on, and I'm just doing this one angle first. And now what we'll do is, that's obviously straight, so that's 180 degrees, and we're going to now measure this angle from here to here, because that's what we want to end up with. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually clamp my protractor in there so we can see what we need. Right, so there's my protractor clamped in there. As you can see, the straight line is 180 degrees there, and the back of this other piece of timber here, I know you can't see that very well, but it's about 140 degrees, actually 137 degrees. So I need to go from 180 to 137. Right, so I need to go from 180 to 137. If I subtract those two, I've got 43 degrees that I've got to lose. Now, it's important that you start by having a straight line across your piece, and you take half off one side and half off the other side. That way, when you bend it and create your angle, this point and this point, each being the half like that and the half like that, will be the same length as that, and when you fold it together, these two ends will meet nicely, so you can weld them nicely. If one is longer than the other, then they're not going to meet, and you're going to have a hole that you're going to have to deal with. Important that we leave this edge in place, so when we cut, we don't cut right through, just cut to there, and then what we'll do is we'll heat this up and we'll just bend it so that it goes there, and then everything matches up nicely if we've cut nice and straight, and we can just weld all around so that it's strong again. Right, so what I suggest you do is that you make that first bend in the ladder and put the ladder up on the van, and then do the next piece, or clamping a piece of timber onto the ladder again, then so that you can then get your next angle and your next angle and so on, as many little bends and angles as you want. Now when we measure these angles and when we measure the lengths and everything, we need to do that on the outside of the bends, because the length on the outside isn't going to change, but the length on the inside is going to change, because we're going to lose some material in there to create the bend. So everything you measure and everything in terms of angles needs to be measured on the outside there, this side, not on the inside of your bends. So with the 72 degrees that I need to lose, I'm going to take half off this side and half off that side. So I start with a square line, which I've put on with my set square, and I've measured out half of 72 and half of 72. I've taken those marks all the way around because I want to cut them quite accurately, so that I don't want to have a gap in the middle that I have to fill in with weld material if I can help that. Of course, always better to cut a little bit inside the line and recut later rather than overcut it and spoil your piece of material. So there's the piece I've taken out. I'm just going to clean that up a bit and flip it over, and then we'll heat it and bend it. Okay, so I've got the blowtorch going. I'm going to use some gloves because things are going to get hot, and you'll find that it heats more efficiently from the bottom. So if you apply most of the heat at the bottom, that should work a little better. How do I know when it's ready to bend? Well, I keep heating until I see this piece start to sag a little bit. Then I know that it's hot enough, and I just give it very gentle pressure to just glide it into the right place. And then okay, so we heated that, and we've bent it, and you can see we're fairly close there. There's not much of a gap, which is good because that will weld better. The less gap we have there, the better it will be when we weld it. This side is not quite as good, but I think we can manage that. So if you like this video, click the like button. That way I'll know to produce more of the same type of material. You could also subscribe to my channel by clicking the subscribe button. Thanks. Cheers.